Uh, this meeting is being live streamed. Got it? Got it.
Got it. God damn it. All right.
How do I do this? Oh, God, I haven't done this in forever now. I forget how to do things.
Huh, isn't that what your wife said? Don't. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, man. All right. Going right to the intro.
It's time for Red Salad Review with your hosts, Wayne Moon, Greg Narlow, and Lou Maddox.
Hello, and welcome to Rat Salad Review. We are finally back. It's been a long 2 months, I think, right?
2.5, give or take.
It's been a long time. I can't say I've missed it, but I did miss the people that I do the show with. And we have Lou and Manny here. Hi, Lou and Manny. How are you? How are both of you?
Good.
Doing good.
Do your hiatus.
Yeah, it's good to hear the theme song again. That song got the head nod shit that make you break your neck. Woo-ha, got you all in check.
Yeah, it was nice to hear that. And I am going to work you, Manny, you and James into the artwork there. I'll make you guys puppets this year, I promise.
You really don't have to do that. I appreciate that, Wayne.
Well, they're already puppets, but he's just gonna make it official.
Yeah, we're puppets under Wayne's leadership here.
You'll be in puppets. I can't wait to see the puppet Manny.
It's going to be very frightening.
It is going to be, but it'll look cool with all the hair you have there. But anyway, before we were starting this show, we were talking about what the hell were you talking about? Something about I don't know.
Jeff Beck.
Jeff Beck. Yes.
Lost. Yeah.
There's a lot of people that's already died this year. You got Lisa Marie Presley, who's died. Jeff Beck has died. Who was the other?
Kanye West's career has died.
Yeah, well, that's his own doing. Yeah.
David Crosby.
Yeah.
And I mean, on the wrestling front, which is of course, everybody dies at some point. But and also there was a wrestler, Jay Briscoe or
yes, Jay Briscoe, car accident.
That was terrible. Oh my god.
Yeah, but both of us. How old was he? He was 38.
Oh, that's it.
Very young.
Yeah.
And he was taking his kids to like a school thing. I guess the kids that do like some kind of I don't remember, some kind of gymnastics thing or whatever. And they got hit by a head-on. Some woman, I guess, lost control of a car. I don't know the full details, but they hit him head-on. He ended up dying, and then the kids all ended up going to the hospital because I think one of them had something wrong with their back, right?
A paralysis of some sorts from the knee down, but they're starting to get control of their legs back and learning to start to walk again. The daughters are going to make a recovery. They're okay. They're good. They've already forgiven the person. I read this on WrestleZone yesterday, actually. The entire Pugh family, because their last name's not Briscoe, people. It's Pugh. It's P-U-G-H. They've forgiven the family of the person who was the cause of the accident. They unfortunately lost their life too. I think I could be wrong about that, but they're a Christian family, and they believe that through forgiveness and faith that they will overcome this. So wish them all the best, and it's a real shame. Me and James are both fans of the Briscoe brothers, so probably the most underrated tag team in professional wrestling. I mean, everything they did just looked like it hurt you, and that is the marking of a truly good pro wrestler, is that if they can make you believe that they're really hurting their enemy, but they're not, they worked you good and they worked you right. So, rest in peace, Jay Briscoe.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I don't know anything about wrestling, but that's a tragic story, and I wish his family the best.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you were saying, Jeff Beck. I'm not a huge guitar, fan of Jeff Beck, but I don't know, you, Lou, because
I have to admit, Jeff Beck was not someone that I was that I listened to growing up. I mean, I think I remember, oddly enough, I remember Jeff Beck was featured on two songs with Rod Stewart, Infatuation and the Curtis Mayfield cover of People Get Ready. But I was
Let me
actually,
correct you on one thing. Rod Stewart was featured with Jeff Beck on People
that's
Get Ready.
right, because I was on the Flash album of
You
Jeff
got
Beck's.
it,
Thank
yeah.
you. However, when I first heard of the Yardbirds in my teen years, I was a fan of Jeff Beck through that, and then I discovered Jeff Beck Group. The original band that he had with Rod Stewart and I believe Ron Wood.
Yes, Ron
On
Wood
bass?
on bass, and Dunbar, who played with Journey, Frank
Yes, and
Zappa on
Whitesnake,
drums.
Ansley Dunbar, yeah, and
Yes, yeah, he
UFO for a
was.
brief time.
Yeah, and you're right. He was in Whitesnake. He's on
He's on the '87 album.
Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't remember which
It's
one he was
not
on.
Tommy Aldridge, so I don't know why people reference Tommy Aldridge for that
I
record.
think
He
it's the
didn't play a
videos.
note.
Yeah, I think it's the videos, because in the videos it's not John Sykes. It's
Adrian
it
Vandenberg and
Vandenberg and Campbell,
Vivian,
right?
yeah, Vivian Campbell, yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
ironic. But no, I listened to Jeff Beck more as I got older, and I appreciated the fact of where he came from, which was the British blues, and then he went on this. I don't want to say he completely went a total Alan Holdsworth route, but close to it.
Yeah.
Probably more commercially accepted than Alan Holdsworth. I prefer Holdsworth, but I love what Jeff Beck did, combining rock with fusion and this and that. And one of the crazy things that I noticed about him was his technique, because as he got, as his career went on, he started playing without a guitar pick, which is crazy. I can't. I have to play with a pick. I have to. So when I see guitar players like him and Mark Knopfler and there's another guitarist. I forgot his name. I'll figure it out in a second. But when I see them play without a pick, using this incredible technique with a vibrato arm, I'm just like, wow. Like Jeff was, he got praise from everyone from Richie Blackmore to Eddie praised him when Eddie was alive. So, that just goes to show you, a definite guitar player is guitar player. So,
Well, Jeff Beck's impact on music, including the music we love, the hard rock, heavy metal, is immense. You brought up the Jeff Beck group, Truth and Beckola, with Rod Stewart and Ron Wood. Those are the blueprints what later became Led Zeppelin and the genesis of heavy metal, hard rock. The second version of Jeff Beck, while not as celebrated, introduced Cozy Powell to the world.
Yes.
And also, then when he decided to ditch singers, because that Beck Bogart Appice project, which was his, hard rock, his last entrance to the hard rock sweepstakes, he was so disillusioned with with that album that he just ditched singers and just went his own way with the jazz fusion, or he combined so many styles of music that it's almost genreless. It's like Jeff Beck is his own genre. And he was such an amazing musician. I saw him live with Stevie Ray Vaughan, the only time I saw him live, and he was incredible, just incredible.
You saw that concert?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I went to go see Jeff Beck, and they were trading off a co-headlining. And in Florida, or in Tampa more specifically, Jeff Beck opened, and then Stevie Ray closed the show. I was kind of pissed because I didn't know Stevie Ray Vaughan that much. So I decided to stick around for Stevie Ray Vaughan. They didn't blow each other off the stage. You'll never see such contrasting guitar players in your life. They're both amazing in their own unique way. And then they came out and did the little Hendrix tribute, Voodoo Child, which I think Stevie Ray Vaughan was traditionally closed with that anyway. So.
Mm. Oh, the other guitar player that I meant to mention that doesn't use a pick, his name is Jared James Nichols, a great blues rock guitar player. You know, doesn't play like Beck. I'm not saying he has to, but I mean, like,
Yeah.
when it comes to three guitar players I know of today that play without a pick, it's him, Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits, and Jeff Beck. So, you know, I may have to switch to that playing technique one day, Wayne. I got to try it out.
See what happens. It can't hurt. Except it'll
But
Well,
hurt you. It'll hurt
Manny,
you.
that's incredible that you saw that concert.
no, I was 19 years old, which was a long time ago. Um, and I also I was a fan of Crosby, Stills, Nash, or Crosby, Stills, and Nash Young, and David Crosby's. I only have a couple solo albums. Granted, most of other people who watch this probably wouldn't be interested, but who knows? The cool thing about hard rock metal fans is we have a wide musical palette more than we're giving credit for.
Agreed.
And as tributes to David Crosby's show, also, that was across the musical spectrum. It wasn't just your Jackson Browns and Bonnie Raitt's. It was also a lot of people that you would normally associate with that genre of music. Anyway, both men left their mark on music. As far as Lisa Marie, that was sad. She was rock royalty, and you know, she did a couple albums. I have one of them. It's pretty good, but overall, rock royalty, and that was way too young. So
Yeah, way too young. How old was her father?
he was only 42 when he died.
Oh, so he was young too.
Yeah, she was only 9 when he passed away.
That's just crazy.
Yeah, but anyway,
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
I think her son died like a few years before that, right?
yeah, like 2 years ago, he committed suicide. So they're all buried in
Had a rough few
Graceland.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing because the one song that became huge, she talks about there's a space in that damn backyard, meaning where her father and grandfather are buried, and now her son was buried, and now of course she'll be buried there. But anyway, that was more of a human side than artistic contribution. Not saying her music was bad. I'm just saying that, she's mostly known. Like, I don't know, that shadow of her father. That would intimidate me if that was my dad.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. I can't call myself a David Crosby fan, but
Right.
I appreciated the contributions to music that Crosby, Stills, and Nash made. Those 3-part harmonies
Oh, incredible.
are ridiculous,
Yeah.
and I would have to say that, aside from Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, another song from theirs that I really appreciated was Southern Cross. That was a good one. I can't take away David Crosby's contributions with the Byrds, 8 Miles High, and To Everything a Season, Turn, Turn, Turn. That's
That's
a
incredible.
great song.
Yeah.
There was a little controversy around the passing of Eddie Van Halen, where David
Right,
Crosby said what he said, that Hendrix contributed more to the instrument than Eddie Van Halen. Look, I'm a guitarist and I'm an Eddie Nutswinger. I wasn't offended by that statement. I mean, Hendrix was the guy who revolutionized the electric guitar for that generation, and his influence is still being felt today. Eddie was the guy that revolutionized it for my generation. And you can say both of them contributed to the evolution of the electric guitar. So for people to get offended by what David Crosby said, guys, chill the fuck out. It's just one man's opinion. I mean, come
Well,
on.
not only that, I don't think David Crosby understood. He probably didn't understand both men's music, but David Crosby was kind of personal friends with Hendrix, where he probably thought Eddie Van Halen came from another planet. That kind of plane was. There's not many musicians there are a lot of bands that changed rock history, or Led Zeppelin's, Deep Purple's, The Who, but there are not many instrumentalists that changed the way the instrument is looked at. Eddie Van Halen, Jimi Hendrix are definitely one of those. Neil Peart for drums, Jen and Whistle for bass. My point is that these men, there's a before and after both of these guys came into the scene, and you can see that, you know.
Yeah, the guy
Well,
before Hendrix, I would say, would have to be Les Paul for the sole fact
yeah.
that he invented the electric guitar.
Absolutely. As good as Scotty Moore was with Elvis Presley or Chuck Berry, I'm not saying those guys didn't influence people to pick up guitars. Obviously, they did. But they didn't revolutionize the instrument like Les Paul, like you point out, or Jimi Hendrix or
Eddie
Van Halen. You know, so at least
yeah, but you know, just one man's opinion, you know. I mean, and honestly, it's like, you know, just keep in mind, people, the heroes are going. So if you have a chance to see them in concert, go see them. And you know, if you can't start your own band, you know, let their influence continue on and bring joy to other people through the gift of music. So,
well,
totally
speaking of gone heroes, today's episode is about another gone hero, a heavy metal hero of ours, Dio, and
all hail the King Ronnie.
And
what a nice segue there, Wayne. Very nice.
Lou set that up for me. That was an easy one. But his documentary was released not too long ago. Dreamers Never Die, and that's the topic of the show. And I watched it the other day, and I thought it was really good. A little longer than I wanted it to be. It was like 2 hours long.
Literally.
Yeah, it's hard for me to sit and do anything for 2 hours like that. But
you're a fucking drummer. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, well, at least I'm moving. You know, I
all right.
Watching a documentary.
Fair enough.
Moving while standing still.
Although I don't know if I could last a 2 hour set of music. I'm lucky I get through like 5 minutes. But
amateur. Anyway,
yeah, we'll see what happens tomorrow. We have our first band practice tomorrow.
Tomorrow's Thursday.
Friday. Yeah, Friday. So we'll see what happens with that. But
we got to talk about that before we end the show.
We did a little show yesterday with some of the band members. That was fun.
Yeah, that aired at 7:00 tonight.
Yeah. It's before we started the Dio thing. Stan was messaging me. He thought it was live, so he was commenting on the video, and he was like, "Why is nobody answering me?"
Because we don't like you, Stan. We'll see you Friday.
So I thought that was funny. But like I said, the Dio documentary is really good. I don't think it really gave away anything that people didn't know already. The only one thing that I did take away from it was he didn't care for the song "Rainbow in the Dark." And when they recorded, he was going to cut the tape and just get rid of the song. And I'm like, what a huge mistake that would have been. You know,
that would have been a huge mistake.
Huge mistake. And they didn't really say why he didn't like it. So I don't know if it was because they were talking about the keyboard part, like kind of was like an afterthought thing. Like somebody did that keyboard intro on there. And
it was Jimmy Bain.
Yeah, that's Jimmy Bain he was a pretty big songwriter in the band. People don't mention that ever. You know.
So I don't know if it was because of that, but I don't know if he would. I don't know what his next choice of a single would have been, but if he didn't come out with that song, I mean, that's a huge song today. It's always on the radio. It's still on the radio today, you know, and people love that song.
I read he thought it was too poppy, but I'm like, yeah, but pop metal in the early 80s,
that's
like
it's big.
Yeah. I mean, you know, metal was being played on the radio, and granted, you know, what they called the metal was, you know, Def Leppard's Pyromania or Quiet Riot's Mental Health, Dio's Holy Diver, you know, and I remember as a kid, there used to be a show called The Rock Palace, hosted by, of all people, Howie Mandel.
Seriously?
And it was Howie Mandel, and it was broadcast on network television. I want to say it was NBC, and that show was my first exposure to Black Sabbath when they had Ian Gillan as their singer. Dio was on there, Alcatraz was on there. I guess it was a continuation of the Don Kirshner rock concert, essentially, is what it was. Although that was on ABC, but it was the same premise. As I mentioned, Alcatraz, Dio, Rat was on it, Night Ranger was on it. You know, you had all the big hard rock, popular metal acts of 83, 84 on it. So that was my first exposure to Dio, and that was the first time I saw Vivian Campbell play guitar. And I'm not gonna lie, that first Dio lineup was iconic. They were so important to the evolution of metal from the 80s to today. Vivian Campbell at the time was a guitarist in Sweet Savage out of Belfast, Ireland. Originally, Jakey Lee was supposed to be Dio's guitarist because Wendy was also managing Rough. She was in the middle of managing Rough Cut, and she was working with Jake. Yeah, he was working with Jake, but he thought he sounded too American. He wanted someone with more of like a British flair to them. So
that kind of makes sense if you look at who Dio worked with prior. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but oddly enough, who ended up getting Jakey Lee? Ozzy Osbourne, the guy that Dio replaced in Sabbath. And then they found Vivian Campbell at a Sweet Savage gig in the UK, and he took him along with Jimmy and Vinny. And I mean, I know that that lineup recorded the first 3 studio albums, but as much as I like Sacred Heart, I love Holy Diver and that Last in Line that much more.
Yeah, those first 2 albums, they're like perfect.
Yes,
there's not one bad song on them.
It's like a perfect continue. It's almost like Holy Diver side 1, Last in Line side 2.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a perfect collection.
Yeah. Sacred Heart kind of did fall off a little bit. It didn't. It wasn't as strong as those first 2.
Had some great standout tracks like King of Rock and Roll, Hungry for Heaven, and the title track. Definitely.
It also had a shit track, Shoot Shoot. Oh my god.
I remember that one. That's probably why.
I think replacing that with Hide in the Rainbow from the Iron Eagle soundtrack may have been a better choice had they done that. But
I think that would have been a way, 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 way better choice. Would have made the album stronger. And that is a documentary right there.
So there you go. Watch it now.
Oh no, I just see it now. Now I didn't watch the documentary. I don't have Showtime, but so your impression, what was your impression of it, Wayne?
No, I said it was good. Like I said, there wasn't really too much that people didn't already know. I mean, there was a couple of things I didn't know because I don't really read up on a lot of stuff. Like when he joined Rainbow,
right?
I thought they were fairly big here. I didn't know it was kind of only like a European type thing where they were more famous over there than they were here. And then when Richie Blackmore wanted to write more pop songs and wanted Dio to write all these love songs, Dio wasn't into that.
Thank God.
I couldn't see him writing that kind of stuff, but I was just kind of shocked because they those first 2 Rainbow albums, those are great, really great albums, and why wouldn't you want to continue on to that and make it better? But Richie Blackmore wanted to do his own thing with Rainbow.
He wanted to make money is what happened.
Yeah, because I think, like you said, Rainbow were pretty huge overseas. In the United States, they were like a mid-level act with Dio, which
see,
like you read about it now.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I was gonna say. Like, to me, it's kind of weird because like when I hear people talk about them now, it's like how great those first 2 albums are, and then to find out that nobody really knew who they were, it's just kind of weird to me. But I can understand it from back then,
Yeah.
I mean,
you read about that Rainbow period, like you guys point out. You would think these guys are playing stadiums in the States, and they weren't. Right. They were playing mid-level, not bad, but not what they did with Joe Lynn Turner or with Graham Bonnet.
No, that was like whole other level, like arena rock. By the way, we say this post Joe Lynn Turner revealing that he's had alopecia his entire life. But some of us already knew that, but we didn't blow your cover like you blew your top, Joe. It's all good. But that lineup of Rainbow was like the quintessential rock star, I guess, type lineup. I mean, Joe looked like the pretty boy, and it worked for them. Oddly enough, that era of Purple ended up influencing. That era of Rainbow ended up influencing Purple when they reunited for Perfect Strangers. And then by the time Gillan got replaced in 90 with Joe Lynn Turner, we had Deep Rainbow, for lack of a better term. But, Blackmore is he's an interesting man. I love him. He's one of my top 10 favorite guitar players of all time, but I'd hate to meet him because he might be a rather difficult chap. Might be.
Well, if you go to the
Yeah, I don't think
Renaissance
it'd
Fair
be.
upstate, you might meet him.
You know how many times I've been to that damn Ren Fair? I've never seen Blackmore's
Well,
Knights play there. I'm so pissed.
How would you notice him anyways? Everybody looks like that.
He's wearing a wig too.
What else was in there? The one thing I wish that that was in there was Ozzy. I think Ozzy was missing from the whole entire thing. I wanted to hear his take on, how Dio replaced Ozzy in Black Sabbath, and kind of like what kind of riff they had with each other a little bit, because Ozzy had that little midget guy on stage. And,
Ronnie, right?
And
well,
if
you want a detailed if you want more detailed information on that, watch the Razor Fist Metal Mythos on Black Sabbath, because he actually goes into that and he backs up his statements with actual audio clips from Ozzy and Dio. And it's funny hearing it back and forth. It's like you think they're actually bickering with each other. It's ridiculous. But apparently just recently Wendy was interviewed and she explained that sometimes Ronnie and Ozzy actually saw each other in the rainbow in passing and they were very cordial to each other. So I don't think it was so much the artists having a problem with each other. I blame that on management. That's what I'll put it on.
Was management, because for sure, Ozzy, for whatever reason, I mean, he got fired from Black Sabbath, and what I never understood was Ozzy's bitterness toward this isn't just Razor Fist, as I think is his name. I saw that video. Yeah. It's been other documented that the Tony Martin version of Black Sabbath, we're not going to get into it. Well, that'll be another podcast. But a lot of promoters were scared off from taking on that version of the band in the United States because Ozzy's management, and I'll let you decide who that is, made threats against that version of Black Sabbath, which is ridiculous. That even if that version of Black Sabbath got a big push by a record label, they weren't going to sell anywhere near what Ozzy. Tony Iommi doesn't care about writing commercial songs. Right. When he tries, he comes out with No Stranger to Love, which he doesn't even play live. He just drops it from the set. So, it's just kind of ridiculous.
Well, it is documented that from Eternal Idol up until the first reunion with Dio, Dehumanizer, Sabbath was especially at a very big they didn't do too good around that period, the Glenn Hughes era, which after the album release only lasted 1 week on tour, and then they ended up getting Ray Gillen, and it didn't work out with Ray in the studio, so they ended up replacing him with Tony Martin, which, Eternal Idol to me is a classic Sabbath album. And then maybe I'm saying that out of bias because Sabbath is my favorite band, but Timeline is everything. And that was the least successful era of Sabbath in the United States. I mean, they were never an opener. They were a headliner, but they were facing the same issue that Kiss was facing in 1982-83, playing to more than half empty arenas or half empty venues. So I think with Ozzy, because he felt that the original 4 members at the time were the definite Black Sabbath, that anything after that would have been a dilution of the original band, which, personally, I think Heaven and Hell is a perfect album, whether you put the name Black Sabbath or Heaven and Hell on it or not. Is it Black Sabbath? Well, it's not the Ozzy era. But to me, it's Iommi has always been the bedrock of what Sabbath is, because he writes the riffs.
Right.
Take him out of the equation, it's not Sabbath anymore. Well,
since you guys saw the documentary, how extensive is the Black Sabbath portion of Dio's career covered in this thing?
Slight. By the way, we're joined by Greg now. Greg, what's up?
Oh, not too much. How are you guys doing?
Good,
Greg, you don't
thanks.
have a face, man. What happened?
He has a
You've
name.
gone, you've gone 2 months and you're in the Invisible Man.
um,
Well,
They-
actually, I've been watching The Boys a lot lately, and I'll go with the invisible cunt.
see you next Tuesday, everyone. They go into it.
They gloss over it. I mean,
10 minutes.
Yeah, the
10 minutes.
longest time they really spend talking about it, and I was actually a little disappointed in how they handled it. But they talk about a lot about them meeting and then the lead up and the release of the Heaven and Hell album. But
Yeah, they
don't-
kind of skipped over the next album, like Mob Rules, a little bit, and then
Yeah,
just went
that's
like to where he
Crazy,
left.
'cause those are like two landmark heavy metal. Forget heavy metal. They're two landmark rock albums in his
Yeah.
rock history.
Yeah.
Not
Not just
denying
heavy
that.
metal. It's
Well, it was
crazy.
glossed over because basically it was a segue. It was built as a segue for his exit from
So-
Rainbow and into forming the Dio band.
yeah.
Oh, so this documentary basically does it focus on his early years before Rainbow?
Yeah,
before
focused
Yeah.
on
Elf?
all his doo-wop stuff, and then
Yes, that's what I
yeah,
meant. Yeah.
all those other bands, and Elf they mentioned too, and even the stuff before that too. I can't remember the names of those two bands off the top.
Ronnie and the Red Caps and the
Yes,
Electric Elves. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they did
Actually,
mention the project that he did with Deep Purple prior to the formation of Rainbow.
Oh, that's the Roger Glover solo album, Butterfly Ball.
That's
Yeah.
the one.
Yeah. I to this day have never owned it, and I'm a huge Deep Purple fan, but I've got a couple Roger Glover solo albums, but it's not something I go look for. If I find it, I buy it, but I don't seek it out. Oh.
Yeah.
What was your impression of that segment, you three gentlemen?
Let Greg
Um,
talk because he just came in. So go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, Greg,
dude.
Invisible talk.
They
Invisible.
they did a pretty good job with that. That was actually probably the best part of the whole thing, is when they were talking about his early years and how he was coming up. That was really probably the most informative part, and I thought it was pretty cool. They got a couple of his old, friends and bandmates in there, played a lot of clips of it.
They had David Feinstein from Elf and the Rods in there too, which was pretty cool.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah,
Yeah,
was
so
it-
I enjoyed that the most easily.
I was ashamed to learn about that one guitar player that was in one of his first bands. How he ended up dying. I think it was a car accident, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Ronnie
yeah,
suffered
bled
some
to
stitches
death.
from it.
Yeah, because they
as a
seem
matter
like
of fact, Mick Wall's book mentions that, if I remember correctly.
yeah, but they seemed like they were pretty good friends, and he was writing a lot of their music. So I just wondered what could have maybe became of that if that guy wouldn't have passed away. But
I don't
Well,
know, Greg. I don't know if it would have become
the-
anything.
the-
Music has
those,
changed so much.
Those Beatles haircuts weren't getting them anywhere,
No.
though. I'll tell you that much.
not at all.
That was the best laugh of the whole thing, was seeing Ronnie James Dio with a mop top.
Yeah. it
Yeah,
was.
I don't think Cortland is famous for anything other than SUNY Cortland and being the birthplace of Ronnie James Dio, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Well, what year did that first Elf album came out? Like 72, right?
72, yeah.
Yeah. So even though it sounds crazy now, he would have been 30 years old when that album came out. And back then, that, in the rock world, it's like, oh my God, he's gonna topple over and die any minute, because he was 30. That was considered like long in a tooth. It's kind of weird how things have changed, but so he didn't have his first.
That's kind of the same
Yeah.
thing with Bon Scott. He was
Yeah.
old when he got into ACDC, so it's kind of like the same story.
Yeah, Bond was really worried he was too old to be in the band. But Bond also had the disadvantage. He had just gotten a car wreck, so
Right.
half his teeth were missing. His looks were no longer, not that he was a supermodel, but he didn't look like he used to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's crazy. And then what else was there? They seem to have kind of glanced over like the more of the later Dio era albums. They mentioned them, but that was a shitty period in his life, because like all the old classic guys, they go through that period where they're like on top, and then he went down low, and then he's playing to like, a couple hundred people in a little tiny club, and I felt bad for him because he this is what he loved to do, and
Do
then to
you
sing,
do you remember the joke they made about that on South Park? Because Trey
No,
and Matt are big Dio fans.
no.
He plays the school dance at one point.
I remember that episode.
Yeah. Are you ready to rock, boys and girls?
And there was the little cardboard cutout miming to Holy Diver. It was very funny. That 90s, it's funny because I remember hearing radio ads for Strange Highways when Q104.3 was still a hard rock station here in New York, Wayne. And they were playing old school Dio, and they were playing stuff of the new album. So
Yeah,
I was like, at the time I thought that, great, Ronnie's making a comeback. That's awesome. He's not with Sabbath anymore. He's doing the Dio thing. And that album was released on a major label, Reprise Records, through Warner Brothers. And then the next album, Angry Machines, was released on Mayhem Records, which was a little indie out of some loft in the Village in New York City. Like this little, I mean, who were some of the other artists on that label? I think Piston is the one. Piston. Well, when they got signed to a major label, they had to change it to Piston from Piston. So, and Nothing Face was on that label too. So they were a small little independent label. I'm just like, well, I'm glad to see Ronnie's coming out with new music, but here's a guy who went from playing Madison Square Garden on his own, 20,000 people, to co-headlining the Roseland Ballroom in 98 with Iron Maiden to 2,000 people. It's like, what the fuck? Both these bands rule the 80s. So it's like, what was popular in 98? Oh, yeah. Some douche nozzle out of Florida called Marilyn Manson. Sorry to insult Florida like that, Manny, but I mean,
well, I'm a Manson fan, but yeah, he's not. How do I say?
And now
it?
he's
not
playing
really
the
a
small
fan
club,
because it turns out he's a douchebag in real life, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, but yeah, I can't disagree with you on that.
it's just
Because to me, Marilyn, it was shock for shock value, which is fine, but Marilyn Manson would try to sell it like it's high art, and you can't put shit in a bag and tell me it's gold. So, but
yeah, I was a little bummed though that they didn't get any, quotes from Tracy G, who was loyal to Ronnie for that period from Strange Highways to Angry Machines prior to Magica. They didn't have Rowan Robinson from Lock Up the Wolves in there. Where was Claude Schnell? I mean, he was Dio's side keyboard man for the longest time. So
I got a feeling a lot of these guys probably Wendy, did they talk about
the Vivian issue?
Yeah, because when Dio got signed as a solo artist to Warner Brothers, that is a fact. That's probably, it never gets mentioned, but I got a feeling that was a point of contention with Tony Iommi, because Dio somehow managed a solo deal while I think he was still in Black Sabbath, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Yep.
But they didn't mention that in the documentary.
No, they either cut out or gloss over, I'm sure at the behest of Wendy, anything he did that kind of made him look like a prick, whether he was in the right or the wrong at the time.
Yeah, because it's almost identical to the Ozzy situation. Ozzy, when he formed Blizz, it was supposed to be the band Blizzard of Oz, and I think Sharon gets blamed, but it was probably Ozzy. Ozzy probably like, no, I want to be a solo artist. I don't want someone like Tony Iommi calling the shots, is my opinion. When the album came out, it came out as Ozzy Osbourne. The album was titled Blizzard of Oz. There was no illusion that Dio was going to be called the Ronnie James Dio Band. But my understanding was that Dio said after the third album, if they make money, they will become equal partners, and that got reneged on. Again, I don't know how true any of this is, stuff I read, but did that come up at all in the documentary? Any of this?
It did, but how they painted it was that the original deal wasn't written like that. And Vivian at the time of Sacred Heart, and especially during the tour, was asking for more money. And that's why he had to be let go from the band, because the band is Dio, not Dio and Vivian Campbell, I believe, is almost Wendy's direct quote there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's killed a lot of artists though, because terrible Ted Nugent, Derek St. Holmes, who was a huge part of his success, got let go after the third Ted Nugent album. Whatever you want to say, I'm not talking about Ted's politics. I'm just talking about him as a musician. Say what you want about those Ted Nugent, nothing he did beat those first three albums. Sorry. And I think Derek St. Holmes had a huge part in that, because it was his voice. It was Ted's music and Ted's silly ass lyrics, but it was Derek St. Holmes' voice that I think helped sell those albums, in my opinion.
I would agree with that.
I think it's always a mistake when artists don't work these things out. You know, I get it. Sometimes you can't get along with that person. You outgrow them. It happens. Van Halen with David Lee Roth. I doubt those two men hated each other, but they wanted different things artistically and management. That makes more sense than, you never heard about Van Halen fighting about money. Those two men, it was egos, and it was about musical direction and how they wanted the band perceived, right or wrong, So
yeah,
I personally hate it when bands expose their dirty laundry out. Like, honestly, I'm sick to death in reading in metal news and rock news sites about two bands in particular nowadays, Queensryche and Journey. I'm just sick of it. Get your shit together and go out and freaking play already. Seriously, like, nobody gives a fuck. Like, who's whoever has the band Amex account. I mean, like, honestly, just get it together and just freaking stop it. Okay, it's ridiculous.
Isn't there a band accountant who has to? I mean, I don't know. It just, to me, that whole Journey thing's ridiculous. All right, so the four of us in a band, and I used a credit card, and I spent more money than I'm allowed it. Doesn't that band accountant go, "Hey, Manny, you've taken more than you should have. You owe the management or whatever back"? Isn't that how it should work? I mean, I don't know.
You'd think.
Crazy.
You would think so.
Well, that's how Vinny
apparently
Vincent
they have shitty
broke.
management.
That's how Vivian what, Greg?
That's how Vinny Vincent ended up broke. He overspent the advance for All Systems Go, and they came knocking on his door halfway through the tour. Yeah, where's our money?
That's insane, because Vinny Vincent was on the Alice Cooper tour, which actually made a lot of money, and Alice pays you pretty well. So how did he get broke so fast? Oh, because he's a moron.
He bought a car, a new house, all kinds of crazy shit. I mean, he blew their money, and to the extent where the contract got extended to Mark Slaughter and Dana Strum, and how that came about, because it was pretty clear it was Vinny who took and spent all the fucking money. Idiot.
Wow. So if they glossed over the 90s that all three of you mentioned, so where do they go? They just go to the glory years and does the movie end, or what happens?
They jump to go ahead.
They do talk to a few people. What I liked about the period where they talk about the 90s, even though they gloss everything over to the point where really all they do is show the album covers and talk about how it wasn't the best time for them, it does really tie into the fact that, with the tagline of the movie and everything, Dio, dreamers never die, how he had this dream and he really didn't make any compromises. He made himself, and it took him a long time, but he kind of stuck with it, and his heart was in it the whole time. And, he would perform the same to 80 people as he would 8,000. And I thought that was cool about it, but it would have been nice to get some more insight, at least into the period, if they didn't do album specific for that. Because I did see the Magica tour, and that was pretty cool. And he was just as awesome in a small club as he was 3 years later playing a double bill with Iron Maiden.
Were they when you saw him, Greg? That tour was a small club. It wasn't a medium-sized theater yet at that point on the Magica tour.
Yeah, the Magica tour was like a just medium-sized venue. Nothing
Yeah.
huge, but
Because he was
still a
starting to
pretty
climb up a little bit before. I am not going to call it heaven and hell. When he rejoined Black Sabbath,
Thank
there were
you.
he was starting to. I'm not calling it heaven and hell. That's ridiculous. When he was starting to climb back up as a solo artist, he was making steady progress, is my understanding. Or am I remembering that incorrectly?
I would say you're pretty
No,
dead on,
you're correct. Yeah.
because that tour, that Magica tour, when it toured the United States, Greg, I'm not sure if this is the tour that you saw. Was Doro the opening act with Ingve as the second act on the bill?
I believe so, but I'd honestly have to pull out the ticket stub.
That tour was sold out at Roseland in New York City. So, you know, with Dio as the headliner and with two powerhouse acts like Ingve Malmsteen and Doro opening for him, yeah, that's uphill as far as I'm concerned. And I saw Dio twice on the Killing the Dragon tour. Once as an opener for Deep Purple and the Scorpions, but that was
would've
at
been
an
cool,
amphitheater.
That would
Sorry,
have been cool. That would have been a cool show.
that was a great show. Dio was
Yeah.
amazing. Oddly enough, he did not play Rainbow in the Dark on that tour.
Hmm.
I was shocked. I thought that would have been the last song. But then the next time I saw him after that, again, same bill. First time I saw him was with Doug Aldridge on guitar. Second time was with Craig Goldie, and that was at Madison Square Garden as direct support for Iron Maiden. Unfortunately, I missed Motorhead. They were the opening act, but you know, I'm a huge Motorhead fan. But you know, just seeing Dio, you know, once in the shed and once in the theater, I was just like, the man's back where he should be. So that was great.
I saw Dio when I was 15 or 16, Sacred Heart tour, but Vivian Campbell was already gone. I don't know if I knew that or not at the time. It was Greg Goldie, and the opening act was Rough Cut. And I thought Rough Cut was pretty good. And then I bought the album, go, what the hell is this shit? But anyway, that's another story, you know. And then I saw the Dehumanizer tour with Danzig opening, which is great. And then I saw that when they became Heaven and Hell, Black Sabbath with Alice Cooper and Queensryche, and Black Sabbath headlined over those two artists. And that was a great show. And I think Dio died like in a year and a half after that. I don't remember, maybe longer, but
It was
if
May
he was sick,
2010.
yeah, if he was sick, you didn't know it from that show. And I took this coworker that I don't even talk to anymore to the show, and he was impressed with Coop because, you know, when you see Coop, he's got a stage show. Queensryche was good, but he was really impressed. It wasn't even Tony Iommi that impressed him, because Tony Iommi impresses you whenever. It was Dio, how crystal clear he sounded, you know. And the other cool thing about Dio, he wasn't your typical rock star. He wasn't like, hey, everybody ready to rock. He was kind of, when he would stop singing, he would, like, you know, say, this is from this album, and he would sell something about the stage. You know, he wasn't a loud, boisterous person like you're used to.
Very soft spoken.
Yeah, which I kind of like. You know, he you could tell he loved his audience, but he didn't feel his audience was stupid. You know, I like that about him, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, Dio was definitely not a dunderhead. There was I just want to piggyback on the Vivi Campbell thing real quick. His playing on those first Dio albums and his contributions, his songwriting, to me, they're unparalleled with a lot of the guitar players from the 80s. I mean, if they had continued to have gone on that you know, that trajectory, you know, we'd probably be talking more about Vivian Campbell as an influence on younger guitar players than we ever would the three from LA, Jakey Lee, Warren DeMartini, and George Lynch. You know, because like because Wayne and I just released a cover of Last in Line, and let me tell you, nailing Vivian's solo was impossible. It was damn near impossible. but everyone's saying how much they love the solo. So I thank you everybody for the praise, but trust me, it was not easy. As far as his treatment in the band, I think he deserved better, because there was a point in the documentary where it was stated that Dio was not making any money from royalties with Elf or Rainbow, or even Sabbath when he was in the band. He started making his royalties back with the Dio band. So to give that same raw deal to Vivian, I was like, dude, it happened to you. That's not fair that you would do it to anyone else, regardless if that's what the business dictates. So I don't blame Vivian for being bitter about the situation. I thought that it would have benefited the documentary if they had him on there, but then that would be an entire different film in itself. So I can understand why they didn't include him in it.
And Greg and Wayne, what's your take on the Vivian story, or whatever you want to say about it?
I don't know. It really doesn't bother me. I wish, the one thing I do wish is Vivian Campbell would sound like that today. Hearing him in Def Leppard and not playing like that, he didn't Dio. It just blows my mind. Like,
we got Last in Line.
No, but would that style fit in what Def Leppard's doing now?
No,
but it would make them better, back to what they used to be.
Oh yeah, of course it would. That wasn't the question. Would it make it better? That goes without saying.
It just blows my mind that he just doesn't play like that anymore.
That's not true. He doesn't play like that in Def Leppard, but he plays like that in the band Last in Line with Vinny.
That doesn't count. He's playing his. No, it doesn't count.
I like their original material.
I do too, but like that first Last in Line album, I mean, we're getting off track, which is fine because we tend to do that, which is why I like us.
What else is new? It's the same guys.
But what I like about that Last in Line, the first one, is the very thing I criticize it for. It tries too much to sound like the Dio stuff,
right,
which is ironic because I like it, and at the same time I kind of criticize it for it. But Vivian Campbell, after he left Def Leppard, not including Whitesnake, he toured with them, and then he got fired for whatever stupid reason. I don't remember what it was. The first
they got
project,
Steve Vai, that's why, and he's still in Def Leppard.
Yeah, well, I know he's not doing badly. I don't think Vivian Campbell's. Yeah, but the first project he did was either River Dogs or Shadow King with Lou Gramm. Now, granted, even if I don't like what Lou Gramm was writing, I would have in a heartbeat worked with Lou Gramm as a musician, just to say I worked with such a great singer. But that project is very ARO, not surprising because it's Lou Gramm. That's his wheelhouse. And River Dogs is kind of I don't know, how would you, Greg? Do you remember River Dogs? What would you describe them as?
You mean AOR, right?
I don't really remember River Dogs all that well.
I was trying to kind of fit into that 90s aesthetic, right?
Like alternative type.
Yeah. Alternative is the best way to say it, really.
Yeah, it wasn't bad, but he wasn't the driver of that band. It was the two other guys who were the songwriters, from what I remember. But he definitely stopped playing that style before he got canned from Dio. I don't
I don't know. It's just like, if it was me, I would have just shut my mouth. I'm with Dio. Just, continue to do what's going, continue to just do what Dio wants you to do,
I mean, to be honest, it doesn't really ever bother me if I know the full story or not, but I believe Vivian had a point and he shouldn't have been let go for that. Like, he should have negotiated something with him, I would think, because he was a big part of the sound and whatnot. Although the way they painted in the documentary, they try to make it seem like Vinny, Ronnie, and Jimmy Bain did most of the writing. That was one thing that did kind of annoy me, is that, and I might be wrong, but to me, it kind of seemed like they tried to make Vivian's contributions less than we know they actually were.
Right.
Oh yeah, I didn't see the movie, but was Jimmy Bain a big part of the songwriting? Yes, but all you got to do is listen to Dream Evil, which is an excellent album. I'm not going to put it down, and compare it to Even Sacred Heart, which is the weakest Dio album of that original three. And you can tell what
Yeah,
Campbell's
it's
contribution
missing
to that band.
it's missing that guitar sound. You know?
Yeah,
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and the songwriting is different. What's that? What was the first single?
I hope that was a chair. Unless somebody's got some bad gas.
No, it was a chair. If I had bad gas, I would just go ahead and just
Pull that out of Fluffy.
yeah. I would get a microphone to make sure we all heard it.
Guess what, Terrence?
I was about to make a craft dinner.
What was it? I Could Have Been a Dreamer. There's no way if Vivian Campbell was in the band that would have sounded like that. Again, I like the song, but I don't think that song would ever come to existence if he was in that lineup.
Right.
That's my opinion.
No, and even on Dream Evil, which isn't a bad record, but you can tell they were still writing the way they were with Vivian, the rest of the band, because there's a few songs on there where Craig Goldie sounds very out of place. It's like something's missing from the guitar.
Well, Greg Goldie came from this band called Jafria, which was kind of
AOR.
Same
They were an
AOR
band.
offshoot of Stars. Let's move on. Or Angel.
What was
whatever.
that? Yeah, they had that stupid it was like a ripoff of Journey. I can't remember the goddamn song, but anyway.
And yeah, well, don't forget, Greg Jafria was the former keyboardist in Angel.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why you don't hear from Greg Jafria anymore, because the dude's a millionaire, because he makes all the bells and whistle sounds and musics for all the not the jukeboxes, the gambling machines in Vegas. So he's good. By the way, the song was called "Call to the Heart" from Jafria that you're thinking of.
Thank you. I have that album somewhere, but I haven't listened to it since I don't know, like 1892. Anyway.
And the other thing I was kind of shocked. Dio had no kids. I can understand why.
He did have a son.
He did have
He has
son.
a son.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where? They never mentioned it in the whole documentary.
Well, he's a doctor, but I don't know. They never talk about it.
He's Dr. Padova, not Dr. Dio.
You
know, he wasn't in the thing at all.
Well, he also was married before Wendy Dio too.
Well, you wouldn't have known that. They didn't mention that at all.
But the thing about it is that's not really. Yes, they did mention what his real name was and how he got the Dio name. But the thing about it is, technically, it's a documentary, but it's not quite like a documentary that's a straight biography of his life. It strictly focuses on the musical part of it and how driven he was that way. They mention a few personal asides, but most of it is just how him and Wendy met and got together and what they did together business wise. But it's very just focused on that one aspect of his life. And then his tragic death, which, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Ronnie. He was a great guy. Everything he's, praised for is definitely well deserved, but I think it could have been done a little better. For what it is, it was really good, though.
Yeah. I think when you have the family involved, I think it's hard to get an unbiased view, because either you bend over backwards to be so unbiased that makes your subject look like a jerk off, or you make them look like a saint, and it's very hard to, when you see these documentaries that are sanctioned by the family, or that to make them look. I think Rush was probably the best one I've seen in a long time, which came out, I don't know how many, over a decade ago. For who was it, Sam Dunn?
Yeah.
Where that was very well balanced. And you actually got a good idea what those guys are like. And even people who watch it who aren't Rush fans go, well, I don't like their music, but I really love these guys as people.
Yeah.
And that's rare to do. Um, I definitely plan on catching the documentary. I do want to see it, but it seems like there's a plethora of these. There's the David Bowie one that I haven't watched yet, and a decade ago, the Doors did one. It was not bad. It was actually pretty good, but they and keep in mind that Ray Manzarek, when he was alive, loved Jim like it was a brother or a son. So they did mention some of Morrison's bad aspects. Have you seen it? But they also kind of glossed over it too, like, well, he just died one day, you know. Yeah, it because Manzarek, even toward the end of his life, just had a hard time facing it. His friend had a problem. So
I have to say though, I'm sorry, Wayne, go ahead.
His son was adopted, so I guess maybe that's why.
Okay. Oh, so what that means? Well, we don't talk about that.
Screw him. We don't have to talk about that kid. He's not blood.
Well, he did speak at Dio's funeral, and he had very loving words to say about him. So that was pretty cool. I have to say though, my favorite segment of the film, and again, I'm probably showing bias because I love the album so much, was the creation of the Holy Diver album cover. Like, I did not know that it was a painting based on an actual photograph.
Yeah, that was kind of funny.
Yeah. Now the funny thing is, the guy who played the camera talent, the person who donned the priest suit and the wetsuit under the priest suit and the chains over the suit, was that was actually performed by Doug Sackman, who is the director of Punk Rock Holocaust and was also a special effects coordinator on a bunch of films for Trauma, including Citizen Toxie, Toxic Avenger 4, and the recent film Shakespeare Shitstorm. And he also directed a couple of porn movies called Evil Head and Repenetrator. So I thought that was I'm not making that up. He has his own IAFD page, his Internet Adult Film Database page.
That's amazing, guys.
But it was great seeing him in that role as a talent. Jumping in the ocean by the bank, saying, "Take the fucking picture, take the." So that was pretty cool. And they talked about Murray the mascot a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So
why did they name him Murray? I forgot. What was the story with that? Why was his name Murray? Do you remember? Did they say?
Because they were sitting around one day talking about, well, do we want to call him Lucifer or this and that, and blah blah blah, and basically just to end it, Ronnie said his name is Murray and got up and walked out.
Meet my devil, my creation. I will call you Murray.
A quick question before we close this out. I just want to ask the three of you, since you saw it, was there anything, the documentary, that wasn't covered or should have been covered in Death? I know you guys kind of answered that, but
no, they actually did a pretty good part with his death, I guess, because they showed what he went through in the hospital, and that he had the stomach cancer and everything, and his recovery, even when he accepted that award. So I think they covered that pretty well, I think, anyway.
Yeah. Was there anything they should have covered more, Wayne, in your opinion, on his career?
Anything they should have covered? I would have liked to hear a little bit more of the the 90s stuff and things like that, and especially a little bit more of the Black Sabbath and what happened with that. But for the most part, I was happy with it. There's obviously there's always going to be something that they could have added and not going to add, but whatever. It was good.
Yeah. One thing I kind of found unfair about that, and I do like some songs off Dehumanizer, but it's far from my favorite album. But and I love the Heaven and Hell one, The Devil that they were definitely right. He went out on one of his biggest high notes with that record. But it's funny because all they mention it by name. They just show a picture of the Dehumanizer album, skip over the 90s stuff real quick, and then they start talking about how The Devil compares to it, though they never say the name or anything, but they don't really give any background other than, that one kind of sucked and this one's way better, but we're not going to tell you why. even though I don't really care for the 90s Dio albums, it would have just been nice for them to talk about that era at all, really. I mean, it's cool. I can't remember the name of the song right now, but the one where he's just playing piano and singing, that's a
Oh,
great
This Is Your Life.
yeah, This Is Your Life. It was cool how they set that up. Very, very emotional and effective ending, by the way, and very sweet the way they did that. But it would have just, I mean, they had the guy that engineered the two albums there. It would have just been nice to hear something about the writing process or what Ronnie's thoughts were at that time, because, you know, they specifically mentioned how he didn't want to do whatever with Dio around the Dream Evil part, and his split with Richie on Rainbow, how he absolutely hated the idea of having like a commercial pop type song out there, how he kind of arrived at that sound during that time period, even though they paint him as a crusader of what was going on and popular in the underground at the time, which he was in a sense. But if you've ever heard Strange Highways or Angry Machines, you would know it borrows a bit from the popular sound at the time, or popular in the underground, however the fuck you want to phrase it. And Dehumanizer does too. So that was probably the one I wanted them to expand on the most. It was frustrating the way they kind of skipped over the whole era.
Also, too, Simon Wright was a drummer too in some of his albums, and nice to have him on the. He wasn't on the documentary either.
No, he had a blip. He was just in a blip. Yeah,
I must have dozed off.
And
Rudy Sarzo got more coverage, and he was in the band less time than Simon Wright. And I love Rudy as a musician. I think he's phenomenal.
That's incredible. So, because he was in the band, what, 6 minutes? You know, Rudy Sarzo.
I thought it was 5.
Yeah. What about you, Lou? What do you think they didn't? What would you have wished they'd cover more of since you watched it?
Well, the 90s era. I definitely think that it would have been really good to have seen Dio as he was. I mean, there is a public access interview with Ronnie that came out in the 90s. Like, it was on the Strange Highways tour with Vinny, Jeff Pilson, and Tracy G. And you see Dio being brutally honest and blunt about everything up until that point, including how he felt about Rainbow, how he felt about Richie, how he felt about the Dio band, and how he felt about Sabbath the first time and the second time around. And he did not have kind words for a lot of people. So it may have been a negative side of Dio, but as someone who appreciates transparency and honesty, and knowing that, you know, I don't appreciate bullshit, I think it would have been good to have shown Dio in his honesty, you know, to show where he was at the time that Strange Highways and Angry Machines was created. Now, Greg and I have spoken about this off the record. I know how he feels about Dehumanizer, and I completely respect it. I love the album. It's an album I actually still listen to. There's a lot of gems on that record that I really enjoy, but I know that there was a huge black cloud over the recording of that album, and especially the tour. You know, they don't go into why he left Sabbath the second time around, because the truth is, you know, here was Sabbath and a successful reunion tour and an album with Ronnie, and then all of a sudden Ozzy saying I'm retiring, and he wanted Black Sabbath to open for him on his last 2 shows, and Dio said, I'm not doing it. I was never asked to do it, and I won't do it. And Tony said, well, we're doing it anyway, and Dio said, well, I quit. And that's why they ended up getting Rob Halford for those 2 shows.
Yep.
So Tony blew it, and
I agree with that. Tony did blow it.
And Dio states that was done by Sharon as an act to sabotage, no pun intended, that lineup of Sabbath so that Ozzy could reunite with them, which at one point in 93, there were talks and plans, but it didn't formulate. So Dio flat out said, you could have had the best band in the world take back its throne, and instead you blew it all on lies. And he was right about that. That was post Dehumanizer. Pre Dehumanizer, that album was supposed to be recorded with Tony Martin. Then he got the boot. Dio came back in. Causey Powell was still in the band.
Yeah, for about an hour or two after Dio came back.
You know what? I think that part of the movie would have made the film, it would have added an hour to it. So maybe it's good that they didn't include it.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. They could have said something, even if they didn't go into it in depth.
Well, the fans know. I mean, if anything, this is made for casual people who want to watch a documentary on Ronnie. That's probably what it was done for.
Oh, it's a fluff piece for people that are watching shit like Access TV, you know, the classic albums type stuff. They do
ID Discovery.
Well, I don't quite know about the informative murder porn channel.
Informative murder porn.
I like that. Oh,
but it is a good documentary, and I do suggest that people watch it. If you haven't watched it yet, go watch it. I think you'll enjoy it. It was fun to watch, and let us know what you think about it in the comments, and let us know what you think about what we talked about in the comments too. So.
Well, Stan left the one comment in the chat. He said his best stuff was doing doo-wop.
Yeah.
It wasn't even released yet, jackass.
Actually, it was released.
Some of it was.
Not now.
Not now, but
wow.
Yeah. There was one guy on the documentary who was a huge Dio fan, and he had this old Dio collection, and he had a couple of those. Actually, probably had every single one of those Dio.
Where the fuck did this guy find this shit?
I have
He's
no
from
idea, but he
Cortland.
was playing it.
He was his friend from the beginning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and just kind of stuck with him throughout the years. Because even then, he's crooning like Sinatra, but he's got an amazing voice. You can still tell it's Ronnie.
Oh yeah, he definitely tells him. You can hear his voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember on eBay. I don't know if it was a legit release, probably not, but somebody had put together a compilation of. I think it was Ronnie and the Prophets. I know they recorded a live album. Only reason I know is actually one of Greg's heroes, Greg Bloom. I think Blue Oyster Cult. Not Blue Oyster Cult, but Eric Bloom's original band, whatever high school band he was in, opened for Ronnie and the Prophets, I think, or the Red Caps or whatever.
Pre-Soft White Underbelly?
No, I don't think it was a like.
No, it would have been right around the same time as the Soft White Underbelly, but I think they were called the Stalker at the time because that was right around when they recorded that album that was rejected.
Oh, okay. So I don't. Only reason I know is because of that, but it's kind of amazing because Ronnie James Dio was what they say he was born 42, right? 1942. Yep. Yeah, so he was a year older than Jim Morrison was, and the same age as Jimi Hendrix did. It took him a lot longer for him to make it. Also, what's amazing is how long it took him to kind of find his sound. Because if you hear those Elf albums, they're almost like New Orleans / Southern rock in some points. It definitely is not. The heavy metal hard rock he created with Rainbow. That's for damn sure. It's not bad, but first time I heard it, it's like what it took me back. I like it now, but I can't say I fell in love with it the first time I heard that Elf stuff personally.
Well, no, and they actually make a pretty good point of that when they do mention it in there, and I think that's another reason why it's important and cool that they actually play in the movie the different earlier tracks he sang on, because he was really more powerful and unwieldy. There wasn't something that existed just yet that could capture his voice in that way, and then Rainbow came out and it just blew everyone away.
Well,
I found it at home.
I did hear one song from Ronnie and the Prophets, and it was a cover of Carole King's "Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow." And let me just say, Ronnie sounded like a freaking angel on it. I mean, he just sang it so beautifully. I think that's one of the most gorgeous songs ever written. I've heard Brian Ferry cover it. I've heard Graham Bonnet and Rainbow cover it on different occasions. My wife's covered it. I think it's one of the greatest songs ever written, and there was nothing he couldn't have done. I'm proud to say I had the pleasure of meeting Ronnie in 2007 when Sabbath was at the Best Buy in Times Square. Me and my buddy Alan Long, we were actually the third and fourth person in line to get our copies of the Dio Years autographed by them. And if Ronnie had his way, he would have talked to me all day because he knew Astoria. Him being from Cortland, and he's like, "Oh, where are you from originally?" I said, "I'm from Astoria, New York." He said, "Oh, a lot of great Greek food there." I'm like, yeah, what was your favorite place? He's like, and then he mentioned this restaurant. I'm like, oh my God. He really had a photographic memory of places, of people, of things, and of course I got to meet my hero, Tony Iommi, and Geezer was drunk. but Vinny was cool as hell, he's like, hey, Greek and Italian paisans. I'm like, yeah, we're cool, man. But they're all just such gentlemen. But for me to meet Ronnie and Iommi was just amazing. But considering that Ronnie passed 3 years later, and it was that more meaningful for me. Just such a sweet man.
I think what's sad about that last Black Sabbath album, The Devil You Know, is I think that they were at a place because they were all older men. They weren't really, that they kind of all that ego stuff was set aside, and they were all happy at the place they were in their career. But I think artistically, I think it would have been interesting to see them continue, and see what they would have done. I think that would have been great. Because I'm one of the few people who like 13, but I could have lived without 13 if that version of Black Sabbath would have continued, because
Same here.
Iommi was a lot happier with Dio than he was working with Ozzy and Rick Rubin, in my opinion.
It just seemed forced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a difference when you're creating music for the love of it, and there's a difference when you're creating it because it's a paycheck and guaranteed money. And I'm sorry, but the example, The Devil You Know versus 13, I rest my case.
Yeah, and 13 is
shit.
It's okay, but The Devil You Know is a freaking great album. 13 is probably the second worst Black Sabbath album, right behind Forbidden.
I think it's worse than Forbidden.
It is worse than Forbidden.
Wow, you guys are rough. It's like I love every Black Sabbath album, but Forbidden to me is terrible.
I can't call it a Black Sabbath album because of one reason and one reason only. Bill Ward is not on it. If you're gonna put Ozzy in the band and not have Bill Ward on drums, then to me that doesn't count.
Well, a lot of people agree with you.
Doesn't bother me.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me either because I am a Bill Ward fan, but I'm more
Tony
bothered.
doesn't even sound like he wants to play on that fucking album. Like, really, how in the hell can you have Tony Iommi on a record and there isn't one fucking truly great riff on it? That's how you can tell it was a bad idea and for the money, because he did not care one bit.
Well, I think if Tony Iommi wasn't fighting cancer and he was fired up like he was in the old days, Rick Rubin's name would have still been on the production credits, but he wouldn't have produced it. Look at when Rick Rubin worked with AC/DC. Angus and Malcolm Young weren't having any of it, so they hired Michael Frazier to took over. Mick Jagger solo album, Wandering Spirit. It's just produced by Rick Rubin, but if you look at the credits closely, Jagger had enough of Rick Rubin, got rid of him, paid him off, kept the album on, and it was Mick Jagger and I can't remember who the other guy is. My point is that some of these artists work well with Rick Rubin. Others are like, screw you. You know, you're overrated.
Yeah, I mean,
all he
Some
does
of
is
them,
sit in
like
his little room.
Red Hot Chili Peppers, love them. Johnny Cash loved them, but
Slayer loved them, I guess, but
yeah, they did.
Slipknot doesn't. Oddly enough,
No.
though, that Slipknot album that they recorded with Rick Rubin, I don't want to say produced, I'll say recorded. That's my favorite Slipknot record. I thought it was
I think it's the best sounding one, actually.
yeah, Volume
Which-
3. However, Corey Taylor can't stand him. But then again, Corey Taylor
Yeah.
can't stand a lot of people, so whatever.
Well,
Well, Corey Taylor
Slipknot,
and
so what do
Mick
you think about
Jagger and Angus Young must have formed a club because those three men. Now, Mick Jagger's never said anything bad about him, but you know why? Because Mick Jagger doesn't have to. He's Mick Jagger. But proof is he got rid of him. And, you know, what does that say?
Yeah, if you want a good producer, hire Alex Rapetti. He's good.
He's all right. Yeah, no, he's good. Anything else you want to talk about? It's time to head out of here.
My
No,
dog beat
done.
cancer, so I'm happy about that.
Yay. That's good news.
If
Yeah.
somebody has a good dog story. How was your dog story, Greg? Is everything okay with that dog?
she'll be okay.
Should be all right.
Awesome.
I don't want to get in that whole thing now. We'll be here another hour.
Yeah, no, just want to know if it's okay. All
Yeah, no, she'll be all right.
right, good. All right, well, this was actually fun. I was kind of not wanting to do it, but I'm glad that we did. We actually did get to talk about the documentary and everything, and some extra stuff there, so it was good. I had a lot of fun on our first episode. Well, actually, technically, it's our second episode back because we just released an episode of a Severed Angel. Actually, earlier today, right?
Yeah, literally an hour before we went live.
Oh,
So this is our first live episode.
first
of the
live
year.
episode of 2023. One of many. There will be another one next week. I have no idea what we're going to talk about, but
No,
think
but
it's-
my face will be on because I won't have laundry everywhere like I do right now. Dog took up most of my day.
no problem. But yeah, we'll be back next week, and it was great being with you guys again. I had a lot of fun,
Same here.
and
Yeah, me too.
Thank you. Same here.
and hopefully James can join us. And
Mhm.
as always, ratsaladreview.com, and on here on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. And also, if you're listening, what the hell is that?
I think the cops have come for Greg.
Yeah, I think they've come to take them away.
And, haha. And if you can, check out Rat's Eye Review and Friends, our cover of Last in Line. We promise you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, you'll like that. And if you listen to this, the podcast version, please hit subscribe on that too. Whatever you're listening to it on, just hit subscribe. And also, too, it would help us out a lot if you can leave us some kind of like, 5-star review or something on whatever podcasting you listen to our show on. And yeah, let people know that you actually like the show.
Mhm.
All right.
And remember, the 1,000 subscriber gets this autographed copy of the Def Leppard tribute album, Let's Get Rocked, that you can hear myself, Greg, and myself,
Greg.
Wayne, and George Dimitri from Severed Angel on bass guitar, and our friend John Witten from Shockwire on vocals. We're covering On Through the Night on this record. Alex produced it and mixed it. And yeah, just get it for that because it's not available on Spotify or Apple Music. So, you know,
It is available on YouTube because I did make a video on here. So
yes, you did.
check
But
it.
remember, 1,000 subscriber wins this autographed copy.
it's a lot of fun. And we're almost there. 885 subscribers as I'm reading this right now. So hit that subscribe button, get us to 1,000, and you will win that CD.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's it. See you guys next
All
week.
right.
Demone.
Good night.
See you guys. Good
Goodbye.
evening.
Yeah.
How do I turn this off now?
And to quote Rick Sanchez, got to take a shit.
I gotta get riggedy, 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 racked.